are you, darling?
It's gone. It comes and it goes.
Oh, how annoying.
Believe me, it's of no importance.
And yet it makes you so nervous.
I can only tell you what the doctor said, to forget it and not to worry.
Well, I'd worry. Dr. Vengard. I repeat it, Dr. Vengard is the man for you.
Don't let's go into that again. I will not be psychoanalyzed.
Oh, now, Jill, that's a very middle-class attitude.
I'm a perfectly normal woman.
Well, that sounds awfully dull.
My dear, you mustn't say that about yourself. Not even in fun.
Seriously, Jill, go to Dr. Vengard. He certainly did wonders for Molly McLean. Do you know she was suffering so from claustrophobia she couldn't ride in an elevator? Can you imagine what that means to a woman living in a penthouse?
And Dr. Vengard cured her?
Well, he must have. I read the other day in Winchell's column she ran away with an elevator boy.
Oh, Molly McLean? Oh, people. My name is Mrs. Baker.
I know. Mrs. Stallings phoned me. Will you please be seated? Mrs. Baker. Your first name?
Jill.
Jill Baker.
685 Park Avenue.
685 Park Avenue. Your age, Mrs. Baker?
22.
I'm your doctor, Mrs. Baker.
24.
Thank you.
Doctor, I want to be frank with you. I'm absolutely certain there's nothing really wrong with me.
I'm sure you'll feel differently when you leave this office. You see, most people know nothing about themselves. Nothing. Their own real personality is a complete stranger to them. Now, what I'm trying to do is to introduce you to your inner self. I want you to get acquainted with yourself. Wouldn't you like to meet you?
No. You see, I'm a little shy.
All right. What seems to be the trouble?
Well, it's difficult to show you the symptoms at the moment because it comes and it goes.
Oh. It comes and it goes.
Yes. It's so unfortunate. It's always the same whenever I see a doctor. When I come, it goes. And when I go, it comes.
Mrs. Baker, whatever comes and whatever goes, there's no denying it worries you a lot. So please drop all your inhibitions, release your inner self, and speak freely. What comes and what goes?
Hiccups.
Hiccups?
Yes. Whenever I get nervous or irritated, I get the hiccups. It's rather unpleasant and sometimes very uncomfortable.
Well, naturally, it's a little early to make any diagnosis, but you're apparently getting these hiccups because of a nervous condition. Let's find out what causes that condition.
Sounds plausible.
Thank you. Would you mind stepping into the next room? Uh-huh. Well, there's nothing unusual in your childhood. Let us examine your present life. Let us look at it through a magnifying glass. Let us examine every detail. Mrs. Baker, you're married, aren't you?
Yes.
When did you get married?
When I was 19.
How long have you been married?
For 6 years.
To the same husband?
Yes.
Aha.
Doctor, please believe me, there's nothing wrong with my marriage. You could go through all Park Avenue and you wouldn't find a happier couple.
Well, I'm sorry, but it's my duty to explore every avenue, especially Park Avenue. How old is your husband?
35.
His business?
He's vice president of an insurance company, but will you please leave my marriage alone?
Very well, very well. Just relax. We'll talk about something entirely different. Do you suffer from headaches?
No.
How is your appetite?
Good.
How do you sleep?
Frankly, not so well.
How does your husband sleep?
Very well.
Uh-huh. Now, during one of these sleepless nights, when you wriggle around restlessly, and you look to your right, what do you see?
My dressing table.
And when you look to your left, what do you see?
My husband.
Sleeping.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
What are you trying to do? Break up my marriage?
No. Just wake up your husband. Well, thank you. That'll be all for today.
Doctor, my husband has nothing to do with my sleeplessness. It's just that I'm super sensitive to noises or to the slightest sound.
Does your husband snore?
No. But I must admit he breathes rather heavily.
Oh, he does.
I don't think there's anything I can do about it. After all, he has to breathe.
I suppose so. Well, Mrs. Baker, I'm afraid your husband's ability to sleep is too big a challenge for you. It's rather like, well, have you ever been on a diet?
Yes, a vegetable diet.
Well, how would you feel if you had to struggle with a few raw carrots and have someone next to you eat a big juicy steak?
With a large baked potato?
Yes.
My husband, 2 weeks ago.
Well, didn't it make you nervous?
No. But now that you mention it, now that I think of it, it is rather irritating.
And not very considerate.
No, it isn't. After all, husbands expect their wives to keep their figures, but on the other
I
hand...
would call it a complete lack of cooperation.
It is.
Uh-huh.
Jill, dear.
Hello, Margie.
Why, haven't I heard from you? How are you, dear?
All right.
Anything wrong?
Oh, Margie, you shouldn't have sent me to that Dr. Vanguard.
Did you go back to him?
No, and I won't. He's not going to break up my marriage. There's nothing wrong between Larry and me.
That's what I say.
Are people talking about us?
They wouldn't dare in my presence. They know you and I are close friends, and I always defend you.
I know, dear. Defend me against what?
Well, now, after all, Town and Country called you the Happy Bakers. That's kind of sticking out your chin.
Well, how many of our friends have stayed married for 6 years? Why shouldn't they call us the Happy Bakers?
Well, why not? Your name is Baker, isn't it?
Oh, Margie. I've been perfectly miserable for the last 2 weeks. I'm so marriage conscious. Whatever I look at, whatever I think of, I always find myself connecting it with my marriage. How I hate that Vanguard. Yet, if I'm honest, I must admit...
What, dear?
Well, if a wife looks at her husband through a magnifying glass, she's bound to see something.
Yes, I should think so.
Things I was never aware of before. Things I never noticed.
For instance?
Well, it's just an illustration, but like the other morning. You know how difficult it is for me to fall asleep. Well, finally, when I'm lucky enough to drop off, promptly at 8:15, what do I wake up to? A gargle.
A gargle. Mm-hmm. That's the bugle call of marriage. Gargle is reveille, snore is taps.
And what is there between? At 9 o'clock in the morning, he goes out of my life.
Oh, my dear, isn't it the truth?
Oh, I don't know what's the truth anymore. I'm completely confused. I'm so uncertain. I've always heard that the ideal marriage should be something of a mystery. That your husband should remain a kind of stranger to you. Someone whose acquaintance you'd like to renew every day. You know what I mean.
Yes, dear.
Don't say anything.
Hello. Hello, Margie.
Hello, Larry.
Hello, darling.
Hello.
How are you?
Fine, and you?
Okay. Have a good day?
Yes, and you?
Good.
Anything new?
No? With you?
Nothing.
Good. Want to see you later.
Well, what could he say?
Why, of course, dear, there was nothing new, and he frankly admitted it.
Jill,
Yes, darling.
are the Coopers coming to dinner?
I don't know yet, darling. I'll let you know as soon as they phone.
I wish you would, because if they're coming, I'll have to shave.
All right, darling.
Now, I don't want to cause any trouble, but cold facts are cold facts. If Mr. and Mrs. Cooper come, that big, awful-looking Mrs. Cooper, he shaves.
And if he has dinner alone with his wife, he doesn't shave.
And if anybody should shave, it's Mrs. Cooper.
I spent 3.5 hours today at Elizabeth Arden's, but I don't rate a shave.
My dear, that's the trouble with 95% of all marriages. Husbands don't shave.
Don't men realize that a beard doesn't stop growing at 8 o'clock?